Hi, I'm Maria Theoharis or Vela Sews on social media. Welcome to Sober 50's podcast on Sew Organised Style. Today we've got Trixi Simmons, who's a Sydney local, and she's here to talk about the Global Kids Sewing Party. I know, imagine that. Let's listen to Trixi now. I'm really pleased that you listened to Mary Morton. The street stitching is an initiative that would probably lend itself to what you're doing with Sew a Softie.
Yeah, it's just like just making people aware that, they can mend their clothes and people want to do it. That's the thing, I wish I could sew, they always say. And then they're sort of fearful of sewing. And this sort of, they got somebody shows them, oh, this is all it is. And they thought, oh, wow. So it's really nice. They're out in the streets and people are really happy to, sort of talk and chat and, be shown how to do something. And it's that feeling again, like kids have, like, wow, I just mended my own hole, or I just sewed on a button. And it's something that's, I think it's just a great experience for people and something, really positive in their lives. And people want to do positive things for the world. They want to help change the world and fix things. And it's only small things that, each of us do that make a difference. So I loved it. Love that idea of street stitching.
It is. It's a good idea. Trixi, thank you for coming on to the podcast for Sober 50 today. I'm pleased that this is our second go together, which is really lovely.
Very exciting.
I'd like for you to start talking to us about the Global Kids Sewing Party because that's on very, very soon.
Yes.
And then we can talk about the Trixi Simon story.
Yes, okay.
Over to you, Trixi.
Okay.
The Global Kids Sewing Party. What's going on? What is it?
Okay. So the Global Kids Sewing Party started back in 2019, and I partnered with the Children's Museum of the Arts in New York City. They were having a civic kids program, and I partnered with them, and I thought this would be really lovely. Kids sew a softie, a stuffy soft toy to give to someone in their community as a really nice way to show kids that they can make a difference, and also getting kids learning to sew. And it was originally supposed to be, one-off event, but I kept on being asked, are you doing the Global Kids Sewing Party again? So I said yes. So 7 years later, the Global Kids Sewing Party is happening again. It happens in March, and it's basically the whole of month, any day in March that people join in. And the idea is teaching kids how to sew a softie and then getting the kids to give it to somebody. And it could be anybody, could be friend, neighbor, teacher, fire station, hospital. Anyone and everyone can join in. And I've got lots and lots of teachers all over the world who join in. They do it with their class. And often the older kids sew a softie to give to the younger kids. They'll often sometimes to Ronald McDonald House, all different places.
Yep.
Last year, we had almost 6,500 kids joining in from 21 countries, sewing softies to give to someone in the community. And I have school groups and teachers joining in every year with a different class or the same class and learning how to sew softies. So that's the basic idea of the Global Kids Sewing Party. It was just, for me, I wanted, kids to sew, but also the idea of kids realizing that they can make a difference. Because I think sometimes we underestimate how creative kids are, how much they can do. And just for kids to realize, wow, I can give something to somebody else and make them happy, rather than kids often getting a lot of things and getting gifts and getting this done. And, here they are seeing that, no, I can do something. And I think that was really important. So that's the sort of basic idea of the Global Kids Sewing Party.
It lends itself to kids who are amazed that they can construct or create something and then give that as a gift to someone else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's an amazing feeling for kids, I think, that they've actually made something. They haven't bought it, they've actually made it themselves. And we don't realize, or maybe we do, that the importance of when kids make something and they do it all by themselves, that's really this sort of so empowering. And I think it's the same for adults when we make something, or we've just sewn a dress or a blouse, or we've done something, makes us feel really amazing. And for kids who are often in a situation where they're being told, this is how you do this and this is how you do that. And, especially in a school situation where there's always, this is the right way to do it. When they're
Yeah.
creating a softie, there's no right way. And they're making the decisions and they're doing the sewing. And I think it's just this feeling of, like empowerment and wow, I did this all by myself. And kids will often say that at the end of a class, look what I did all by myself. So, I just think learning to sew is so good for kids in so many ways.
So when you were asked in 2020, is the Global Kids Sewing Party on again? What was the feedback you got at that time, and were you surprised by that feedback?
I don't think I was surprised. I think it's more like a feeling like, wow, I'm so like thrilled that people want to do this again. But in some ways, I'm not surprised because every time almost that I introduce or show a teacher, look, you can sew. It's really easy. Here's how you do it. The kids will always come back to the teacher with the same thing. When are we sewing again? So even though every time someone says this to me, I get a kick from hearing it, I'm so used to hearing the fact that teachers say to me, look, the kids love the sewing. All they want to do is sew and they've asked to do sewing again. So it always gives me a kick. I love hearing it and I can never hear it too many times. But I guess in some ways it doesn't surprise me because I know how much kids love sewing.
It's interesting that it's teachers and students. Do you also get parents and carers with
Yes.
their children? Yeah.
Yeah. When I started Sew a Softie back in 2016, I mostly just thought of, getting parents and carers to sew with their kids. And
Yep.
back then I started Sew a Softie, or Sew a Softie in July, and that was aimed basically at parents sewing with their kids. And I got a huge response. And often it was the mums who would say, oh, but I can't sew. And I said, no, you can sew. I'll show you how to sew. It's easy. So I had a lot of parents, but I realized very quickly that teachers want to sew with their students and they didn't often know how to sew. The teachers didn't know how to sew or how to make it simple for the students. And again, in a situation when you've got 20, 30 or more kids, how do you teach all those kids to sew without it being like a catastrophe? So the Global Kids Sewing Party, when I started that, I focused more on getting teachers also involved in the Global Kids Sewing Party. And teachers especially love the idea of sewing and community. That was really good for teachers. I've had, from parents join in for the Global Kids side, and, carers. I'll have schools, sewing guilds I've had join in. So all different sorts of church groups sometimes sew in, and even sewing clubs at school. They're really great.
I like the community connection of what the Global Kids Sewing Party provides. That's really
Really,
heartwarming.
yeah, it's really nice. I just think it's one of the things that's really lovely for kids again to see, look, I've donated my softie, and the reaction when they give it to somebody, to see the faces of, if it's the older kids giving it to the younger kids, it's just, like you say, really heartwarming and really, really lovely.
So, how can people get involved with the Global Kids Sewing Party this year?
Okay, so on my website, Sew a Softie, there's a page, Global Kids Sewing Party 2025, and it gives you all the information, or at least hopefully I've remembered all the
It
information.
does.
And they just got to sign up and to register to join in. And then any day during March, they do their party. And if they'd like to have post photos on Instagram or Facebook, that's great. Otherwise, they can send me photos. I've also got a lot of sponsors who have sponsored prizes for the Sew a Softie Global Kids Sewing Party. So I've got like sewing machines, sewing supplies, threads, glue, and iron. So there's lots of prizes, just a little bit of an incentive. And it's really nice to have all those sponsors. So if they want to get a prize, they just have to either send me photos or post the photos on any social media so I can see that they've had their party. So it's just sign up and register.
So, the hashtag that people would use would be hashtag Sew a Softie.
Yeah.
So, on Instagram, just for people who are watching and listening, the hashtag Sew a Softie has got over 5,000 posts of images of people who have joined Sew a Softie over the years. That's a lot.
Oh, good.
Oh, that's wonderful. So I know that, and I'll show this on the screen, but for listeners, on the Global Kids Sewing Party page, there's the details that it starts on the 1st of March and continues through the whole month. There will also the resources as well. So the Square Zenki, which you'll
Yes.
talk to me about in a second, and also where to donate your softies. Now, the Square Zenki, talk about that.
Well, Square Zenki is actually the original Zenki that started this whole Zenki movement, I'm going to call it. This is back over 10 years ago. I needed to do a project when I was doing workshops in bookshops and museums, and I wanted something that was good for boys and girls. And he actually originally came from the idea of a square cushion. So it was like a square cushion with fringes. I thought boys, wouldn't like the square cushion, perhaps. So it was a different idea.
Mm.
So I just made from this square a little square Zenki who is not he's not actually here today.
But we'll have him on the screen. So,
Yes. So
yep.
the idea basically for square Zenki is that and was that there was a front piece of felt, a back piece of felt, and all you needed was a running stitch around the torso. And the first square Zenki, his name was actually Zenki because I thought there was only ever going to be one Zenki, and that was him. But I realized pretty quickly that a lot of parents, a lot of mums wrote to me often that the sewing was difficult. And I wanted to find a sewing project that was really, really easy to do. It was quick. It was doable for anybody, especially those mums who said they couldn't sew. So I worked out pretty quickly that from a square Zenki, it could be a circle Zenki, a triangle Zenki.
Oh, yeah.
And it come to be that there are thousands of Zenkis. And the idea, and I know that your viewers, your listeners won't be able to see this, but the Zenkis are almost always the same in that there's a front piece of felt, which is
Hmm.
like the Zenki's torso, and it's always just sewn with a running stitch. And the back of Zenki is arms, is whatever is all part of that back piece of Zenki, back piece of the soft. It's sort of like the idea is like a pancake sort of flat little felt, although he has stuffings. That there's nothing, no ears to insert, no arms to insert.
Yeah.
The idea is just to make it as simple as possible and just using a running stitch because often, I have a workshop, I need to do my workshop, it's an hour and a half. And every child has to leave that workshop with a completed Zenki softie. So the idea was just, what can I design that makes sewing simple, quick, doable for adults and successful for kids, because anytime when ears often had to be pinned in, it just made it a bit wonky for kids, too many bits and pieces
Yeah.
fell out. So that's why I designed these Zenkis, so that the back piece, like I said, everything's in the back piece of felt and the front piece is the torso, and you only need that running stitch. And it also lends itself to hundreds and hundreds of creative possibilities, as you can see with my Zenkis. And when I have workshops and I usually just do my square Zenki or whatever, every child comes out of that workshop with a completely different Zenki softie. So I hope I've answered your question
You
after all.
have.
Oh, good.
We know the history of where the Square Zenki came from and how the Zenki has now morphed
Yes,
into basically a project that a child can sew within an hour and a half in
yes,
90 minutes. Yes.
yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Brilliant.
Yes, and there's I've got a few Zenki books. I released, there's the original Zenki book was called The Zenki Way. I've actually had since then Kandinsky inspired Zenkis, which came out of a workshop I did at the Art Gallery of New South Wales in conjunction with their Wassily Kandinsky art exhibition last year. And I'm just about to release in a couple of weeks another book. It's just square Zenkis. It's what you can do with squares, and it's again 10 Zenkis, and you just wouldn't recognize them. So yes, so that's another book that's coming out. So the Zenkis have actually changed my life in ways I could never have imagined. From that first little square Zenki, it's just been an amazing journey.
So, Trixie, your background is what I'd like to talk about now because you've already touched on how you've been associated with art galleries, not just in Australia, but in the States. Talk to us about how that all came about.
Well, with the Museum of the Arts in New York City,
Yeah.
it was just I saw they had a civic kids program, so I asked them. I told them what I do and if they'd like to, partner, and they said yes straight away. So that's how that's evolved with the Museum of the Arts in New York City. And that year, I had lots of museums all over the world also joining into the Global Kids Sewing Party. I can't remember the Science Museum in New York, and they all had also had Global Kids Sewing Parties in their museums, and a lot of them used a lot of my projects for those their projects in the Global Kids Sewing Party. So these are just random things that just happen, and I love every single one of them.
I'm hoping that our viewers and listeners can see how something as achievable as a softie or a zenki is seen by the creative community as a valid craft, as something that is instrumental in helping children create the skills to be either creative or to be constructive.
Kids don't have usually a problem of being creative. It's one thing I've found. Adults have the problem. It's like, oh, what should I do? This, that. Kids will just go, they don't have problems with being creative or knowing what to do, unless the only problem I've often had is if I have in a class, and as I do in a parent-kid classes, if the mother is sitting next to a child telling them what to do all the time, it stops the child being creative. If they think they're doing something wrong, is this the right thing to do? If kids have that sort of fear of making a mistake, there's a problem. But usually I find that kids have no problems being creative. They love just getting into the work, doing their sewing. They know the colors they want. They know what they want to do. And like I've taught thousands and thousands of kids, and there's no problems. Kids' creativity is just absolutely amazing. And forgot to mention with the Zenki ideas, I have a lot of grandmums who write to me who want to sew with their grandkids, because often the grandkids say, look, can you sew with me? But what happens is often experienced sewers, grandmums who are amazing sewers, don't know how to bring the sewing down to a level that's easy for kids, and they don't know how to, what sort of projects to choose. And this is often a question that I get, what project should I do? And that again is, where the Zenkis come in, because it's a project that grandmoms or like anybody can do with grandkids, and it's achievable. It's like a really quick project. They start off with, they can just give their grandchild any shape and a piece of felt, for the background. And if you're one-to-one, you could finish this project, in less than an hour, depending on the, child's age. So Zenkis are perfect for grandmums, and that's sort of something that, I just forgot to mention. And I guess I'm also hoping that a lot of those grandmums who have grandkids will join the Global Kids Sewing Party with their grandkids, and it's a great opportunity for them to sew with their kids. And again, you have the community aspect, talking to your grandchild, where should we give it or who should we give it to? It's also a nice discussion and talking about other people and who might enjoy getting the Zenki.
Yeah.
So, so hopefully grandmoms join into the Global Kids Sewing Party also.
So you've got intergenerational links with grandparents and grandchildren. You've got skill building, and there's the community aspect of giving and thinking about who in the community might like a softie or a Zenki. And as you've said, like in 2024, you had 6,500 children, kids, join the Global Sewing Party.
Yeah, it was amazing.
Global Kids Sewing Party.
Yes. And, when it comes to sewing with kids, I just think there's so much that kids get from sewing. It's not just like the manual skills. It's the, chance for them to be creative, a chance for them to do something by themselves. It's, I don't know. I think sewing is just such an amazing skill. And I did this all by myself feeling. And how wonderful is that for kids to have, to do sewing. And I guess it's like also the idea, once kids feel happy, the sewing experience is fun, they often will become adults who sew and who make their own garments. And this idea of, the well-being for kids, and also the sustainability. Oh, I've got a hole in my dress. My teddy bear's got a hole, and they just learn how to sew the hole up and or sew a button on, which is really, really important.
Yes,
All the positive things that come out of teaching kids to sew are just numerous.
I agree with you. I think that's so good. Sorry, we're on the
Oh,
same
I know.
board.
And
We agree.
yeah, and the world sort of missed out this generation of teaching kids to sew. Because when I was at school, we learned to sew,
Mm.
not always amazingly sewing classes. And there was this whole generation of kids that missed out on sewing. So the grandmums can sew, the mums can't sew, and they're not teaching their kids. So it's up to us grandmums to teach our
Grandparents.
grandparents, yes. I'm still waiting for a couple of the grandfathers to join in, though, I must say. But yes, any grandfathers who want to join in, I'd love to see it. But yeah, for grandparents to teach their, the kids, grandkids to sew, and we're missing that generation. So that's one of the good things that a lot of teachers are joining in, and they're teaching the next generation to sew. So I think that's amazing.
You're doing a great job, Trixie.
Oh, thank you very much.
Trixie, when we first met, it was about Sew a Softie.
Yes.
Sew a Softie. That's
So
who you
yes,
are.
yes. I actually started blogging in 2009. Back then, my blog was called Colored Buttons, and I was just doing, because I was teaching after school craft classes, so it was all sorts of different craft stuff. And then I slowly started introducing sewing into my classes and after school classes and holiday workshops. And that's when I started to see how important sewing was for kids and how they weren't getting sewing in anywhere else, not school, not classes. So I started introducing more and more sewing. And that's in 2016, I started Sew a Softie. And the idea was there would be one day a year called Sew a Softie Day, when anybody who knew how to sew would teach anybody who didn't know how to sew, basically, kids or neighbors, how to sew a softie. So that was back in 2016. It was a one-day event, but by the next year, it was so popular, it became a 1 month event, and it was called Sew a Softie in July. And I had bloggers all over the world would post every day in July a different simple to sew softie. So if you go back onto my website, you'll see that there's Sew a Softie in July for that year, and every day there'll be a different tutorial showing you how to do a simple softie. And so that the next year, I think we had two tutorials every day. And then the following year, I had kid ambassadors, and this was really fun. So I had kid ambassadors who would teach a friend how to sew a softie. And that was really fun. So I can't remember, 30, 40 different kids all over the world teaching friends how to sew a softie. And then I had the Global Kids Sewing Party. And last year I didn't do Sew a Softie in July because it became a little bit too much for me with all the events. But if you go to my Sew a Softie blog, I have lots and lots of free tutorials, step-by-step photo tutorials. I have video tutorials showing you things like how to thread a needle with, kids, how to tie knots, because one of the problems that teachers have is getting kids to thread needles, which is difficult, and tying knots. And I've got lots of simple solutions to helping teachers getting their kids threading their needles. And that's basically with a simple piece of paper, which they use to thread their needles. So I've got YouTube, my blog, Instagram, where it's free tutorials, tips, tricks, and all those sort of things, and what sort of stuffing to use and how to stuff. So I think that's sort of more or less Sew a Softie.
I mean, we're at 2025 now. So all of those tutorials and all of the ambassadors and the various softies, it's a wealth of information that anyone can go into on your website and all of your socials to see.
Yeah, it's all there, lots and lots of free stuff, which is just to encourage people and to show people you can do it. This is how the idea was Sew a Softie actually started, with the idea of all these mums who started to say, I can't even sew on a button. Well, here's some projects. I can't sew. Well, I'll show you that you can sew, Simple running stitches, all you need, and you can sew.
You can.
You can, yes. And I've never had anybody come back and say to me, well, I can't sew still. They tell me they can't sew. I show them what to do, and they can see they can do it.
A simple running stitch.
Yeah, simple running stitch. That's all it is.
Yeah.
Quick, easy, manageable for kids. So yeah, it's been an amazing adventure for me with my Zenkies.
And we're in 2025 and you're still at it. And we've got, the Global Kids Sewing Party happening in all of March.
Yeah.
And so many more things that are coming from you as well this year. Yeah.
Yes.
Trixi, thanks for coming onto the podcast of Sober 50 to talk about Sew a Softie and the Global Kids Sewing Party and all of the free resources that you've got available for older adults, grandparents, teachers, carers to help children, kids, how to sew and sewing a softie or any sort of toy to give to the community.
Thanks so much, Marie. It was amazing.
Thanks again. Bye.
Ta-da.
This episode of Sew Organised Style podcast for Sober 50 was video and audio produced by me, Maria Theoharis, in my sewing room with permission from Trixi, sound by bensound.com. If you'd like to support the production of Sew Organised Style podcast, pop over to Patreon. Make sure you direct message Sandy on Sober 50 to support their ongoing challenges and posts. Go back through the podcast archive to hear and see more people from the sewing community. There are over 470 episodes to listen to now. I look forward to being with you in your sewing room next time. Stay safe, everyone.